The sun was barely up when the news hit me like a freight train. My daughter, Ellie, had inherited $33 million from her late mother's family wife, Clara, who'd passed 2 years prior. I was in my cramped office at Jake's auto shop in Willow Creek, Nebraska, sipping burnt coffee, when the phone rang. It was Ellie's lawyer, some slick city type, informing me she'd received the estate. Not a dime for me, not even a mention. I didn't care about the money. Clara and I had built a simple life here, fixing cars, raising Ellie in our small farmhouse. But what gutted me was Ellie's call an hour later. Her voice was ice. "Dad, we're done. I don't need you anymore." Click. No explanation. My only child, the girl I'd raised through scraped knees and teenage tantrums, cut me off like I was nothing. I sat there, staring at the grease-stained wall, my chest tight. 20 years of parenting, gone in a single phone call. Willow Creek's a small town, everyone knows your business. By noon, whispers were already spreading at the diner. Jake's daughter hit the jackpot and ditched him, they said. Kept my head down, wrench in hand, pretending to focus on a busted carburetor. But my mind was spinning. Ellie had always been headstrong, like her mom, but this was betrayal. I taught her to drive in the fields behind our house, held her when Clara died. What had I done to deserve this? That night, I drove home to our old farmhouse, the one Clara loved for its creaky porch and wildflower garden. Ellie's room was untouched, her old band posters still taped to the wall. I sat on her bed, holding her childhood teddy bear, and wondered where I'd gone wrong. Was it the fights we'd had after Clara's death? I'd been tough on her, sure, pushing her to stay grounded, to not let grief swallow her. Maybe I'd pushed too hard. But to erase me completely, that wasn't the Ellie I knew. 3 days later, the black SUV rolled into my shop's lot, kicking up dust. Ellie stepped out, her city clothes glaring against the backdrop of rusted tractors and hay bales. The locals stopped, staring. She marched toward me, her face pale, eyes wild. "Dad, I need your help," she said, her voice cracking. I froze, wrench still in hand. The girl who'd cut me off was begging now. Something was wrong, badly wrong. I crossed my arms, heart pounding. "You got $33 million. Ellie. What could you possibly need from me?" Her lips trembled, and for the first time in years, I saw fear in her eyes. "It's gone," she whispered. "All of it. They took it." My stomach dropped. Who were they? And how could $33 million vanish in 3 days? She collapsed into a chair in my office, the same one I'd been in when she'd called to disown me. Her hands shook as she explained. After the inheritance, she'd moved to Omaha, lured by a group of investors promising to triple her fortune. They'd wined and dined her, flashing contracts and private jets. She'd signed everything, desperate to prove she could handle the money. But it was a scam, every cent wired to offshore accounts, untraceable. Now, she was broke, humiliated, and alone. I wanted to yell, to tell her how reckless she'd been. But looking at her, I saw Clara's same stubborn jaw, same spark in her eyes, now dimmed by shame. "Why come back?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant. She looked down. "Because you're the only one I trust, Dad." The words hit hard, but they didn't erase the sting of her betrayal. Part of me wanted to turn her away, let her face the consequences. But I couldn't. She was still my daughter. I grabbed my truck keys. "Get in," I said. "We're fixing this." We drove to Omaha that afternoon, the silence between us heavy. I didn't know what we'd find: crooks, lawyers, or just a trail gone cold. But I knew one thing. I wasn't letting Ellie face this alone. No matter how much she'd hurt me. The road stretched ahead, lined with cornfields and fading sunlight, and I gripped the wheel, wondering if I was ready for what came next. Omaha's skyline loomed as we pulled into the city, a stark contrast to Willow Creek's endless fields. Ellie sat beside me, staring out the window, her hands twisting in her lap. I could feel her shame radiating, but I kept my eyes on the road. My anger hadn't faded, her cutting me off still burned, but seeing her so broken stirred something deeper. Clara used to say family was the only thing that mattered when the world turned sour. I wasn't sure I believed that anymore, but I'd be damned if I let those scammers walk away. Ellie had given me the name of the investment firm Bright Future Capital. Sounded like something straight out of a late-night infomercial. She showed me the contract on her phone, a dense mess of legal jargon. I'm no lawyer, just a mechanic who knows a bad deal when he sees one. The address listed was a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel, the kind of place that screamed money. We parked my beat-up truck in a lot full of shiny sedans, and I felt every stare as we walked inside. Ellie, in her designer jacket, looked like she belonged. Me, in my flannel and work boots. Not so much. The receptionist, a young guy with a too-perfect smile, claimed Bright Future had relocated last week. Convenient. I pressed him, my voice low but firm, until he admitted the company had never leased the office, just used it for a day. Pop-up scam. Ellie's face crumpled, and I put a hand on her shoulder, more to keep myself calm than to comfort her. We're not done, I told her. We'll find them. Back in the truck, I called an old buddy, Tom, who'd moved to Omaha years ago and worked as a private investigator. He wasn't cheap, but he owed me for fixing his Chevy Freeback in '98. Over coffee at a greasy diner, Tom dug into his laptop, tracing Bright Future's digital footprint. The company's website was gone, but he found cached records linking it to a guy named Victor Kane, a known con artist with a rap sheet longer than my arm. He's slick, Tom said, sipping his coffee. Works with a crew. Targets new money like your daughter. They're probably halfway to the Caymans by now. Ellie's eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. I was so stupid, she muttered. I wanted to agree, to shake her and ask why she hadn't called me before signing her life away. Instead, I said, we all make mistakes. It's what you do next that counts. Clara's words, not mine. They felt right, though. Tom tracked a lead to a warehouse on the edge of town, a place Kane's crew reportedly used as a base. It was a long shot, but I wasn't ready to give up. That night, Ellie and I staked out the place from my truck, parked across the street. The warehouse was a hulking shadow, its windows dark except for a faint flicker inside. My gut told me we were close, but close to what? Trouble. Probably. Around midnight, a van pulled up. Two guys got out, carrying duffel bags. Ellie grabbed my arm. That's them, she whispered, her voice tight. The ones who met me in Omaha. My blood boiled. I wanted to storm in, wrench in hand, and take back what was hers. But I wasn't that reckless. Not yet. We watched as the men disappeared inside. Tom had warned me Kane's crew was dangerous, connected to bigger players. Maybe even mob types. I glanced at Ellie, her face lit by the glow of a streetlight. She looked so young, like the kid who used to beg me to fix her bike. Stay here, I told her, grabbing a flashlight. I'm just gonna look. Dad. No. She hissed, but I was already out the door. The warehouse smelled of oil and dust. Its corridors a maze of crates. I moved quietly, heart pounding, until I heard voices. peering around a corner. I saw them, Kane and his crew, counting stacks of cash under a flickering bulb. My daughter's money. My fists clenched. But I knew I couldn't take them alone. Back in the truck, Ellie was frantic. What did you see? I told her the truth. Every damning detail. Her face hardened. We're getting it back, she said, her voice steady for the first time. I nodded, but my mind raced. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice and maybe, just maybe, rebuilding what we'd lost. The warehouse stakeout left us both rattled. But Ellie's fire was back. I hadn't seen that spark since she was a teenager, arguing with me over curfews. We drove back to Tom's office, the city lights blurring past us. My hands gripped the wheel too tight. My mind stuck on the cash I'd seen Ellie's future, stacked like poker chips in a dirty warehouse. Tom was waiting, his laptop open, a cigarette burning in the ashtray despite the no smoking sign. You're in deep now, Jake, he said, exhaling smoke. Kane's crew isn't just some small-time scam. They're tied to a syndicate out of Chicago. Ellie's face paled, but she leaned forward. What does that mean for getting my money back? Tom shrugged. Means it's risky. They've got muscle, lawyers, and probably cops in their pocket. You go after them. You're not just fighting Canary, fighting a machine. I saw Ellie flinch, but she didn't back down. I don't care. They don't get to win. I admired her grit, but it scared me too. This wasn't Willow Creek, where disputes got settled over coffee at the diner. This was the real world, ugly and unforgiving. Tom agreed to dig deeper, but he needed time. Go home, he said. Lay low. I'll call when I've got something. I didn't like it, but I nodded. Ellie and I drove back to the farmhouse. The silence between us less heavy now, but still thick with questions. Back home, the town was buzzing. News of Ellie's return had spread, twisted into gossip. She blew the money on drugs. One neighbor whispered at the gas station. Gambling, said another. I ignored them, but Ellie heard every word. She stayed in her old room, staring at Clara's old photo albums, her fingers tracing her mom's smile. I thought the money would make me free, she said one night, her voice small. But it just made me stupid. I sat across from her, the kitchen table between us. Money doesn't change who you are, Ellie. It just shows you who you've always been. She looked up, eyes wet. Then why'd I cut you off? The question hung there, raw and real. I didn't have an answer, not one that wouldn't hurt. Instead, I said, you're here now. That's what matters. The next day, Tom called. He'd found a lead lawyer named Marion Holt, who'd notarized Ellie's contracts. She was based in Lincoln, a 3-hour drive. She's dirty, Tom said. Works with Kane regularly. If anyone knows where the money went, it's her. Ellie and I hit the road again, the truck rattling along highways lined with corn and soy. She was quiet, but I could tell she was steeling herself. I was too. Holt's office was in a strip mall, wedged between a vape shop and a nail salon. She was polished, mid-40s, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm sorry, but client confidentiality, she started. But Ellie cut her off. You helped them steal my life, she snapped, slamming the contract on the desk. I'd never seen her so fierce. Holt's smile faltered, but she doubled down, threatening to call security. I stepped in, keeping my voice calm but cold. We know about Kane. We know about the syndicate. You talk, or we go to the feds. It was a bluff mostly. Tom had mentioned the FBI sniffing around Kane's crew. But we had no real leverage. Holt's eyes flicked to the door, then back to us. "You don't know what you're messing with," she hissed. But she was rattled. We left with nothing concrete. But I saw it in her face, she was scared. That night, back at the farmhouse, Ellie paced the porch. "She knows something, Dad." I could feel it. I nodded, but my gut twisted. Holt's warning echoed in my head. We were in over our heads, and I wasn't sure we could claw our way out. But Ellie's fire was contagious. For the first time in years, we were a team again, fighting for something bigger than ourselves. I just hoped it wouldn't destroy us. The next week was a blur of dead ends and sleepless nights. Tom kept digging, but every lead on Kane's crew seemed to vanish like smoke. Ellie and I spent hours poring over her contracts, trying to find a crack in the scam. The farmhouse kitchen became our war room, littered with coffee mugs and scribbled notes. I catch Ellie staring at Clara's old garden through the window, her face a mix of guilt and determination. "I wanted to make her proud," she said once, barely audible. Instead, I lost everything she left me. I didn't know how to respond. Clara's death had broken us both, in different ways. I'd buried myself in work, while Ellie had run toward the city, chasing a life she thought would fill the void. Now, here we were, picking up the pieces together. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Tom finally got a break. A contact in Chicago had spotted Kane at a private club, meeting with a guy named Marcus Reed, a big player in the syndicate. "Reed's the money man," Tom said over the phone. "If your daughter's cash is anywhere, it's with him." The club was exclusive, the kind of place where farmers like me didn't belong. But Ellie had an idea. "I've still got the clothes," she said, pulling out her designer jacket. "I can get us in." I didn't like it. Dressing up to play rich felt like walking into a lion's den wearing steak. But Ellie was adamant, and I couldn't say no to the fire in her eyes. We drove to Chicago, a 7-hour haul, my truck looking like a relic next to the city's gleam. Ellie transformed in the hotel bathroom, her makeup sharp, her posture confident. I swapped my flannel for a borrowed suit from Tom, feeling like a fraud. "You clean up nice, Dad," Ellie teased, but her smile was tight. She was nervous too. The club was all velvet and low lights, the air thick with cigar smoke and arrogance. Ellie worked the room like she'd been born to it, charming the bouncer into letting us past the velvet rope. I stuck close, scanning for Kane or Reed. We found them in a back room, behind a glass partition, laughing over whiskey. Kane's sharp suit and slick hair made my skin crawl. Reed was older, broader, with a predator's calm. Ellie's hand gripped mine under the table, her nails digging in. We couldn't hear their conversation, but we didn't need to. The way Kane gestured, the way Reed nodded, it was clear they were celebrating. My daughter's money, their victory. I wanted to smash through the glass, but Ellie's whisper stopped me. "We need proof, Dad. Something solid." She was right. Rage wouldn't get us anywhere. We slipped out before we were noticed, but not before Ellie swiped a napkin with Reed's initials scribbled on it, a small clue. But something. Back at the hotel, Tom met us with news. He'd hacked into an email chain between Holt and Kane, confirming Reed was holding the money in a private account. "It's a start," Tom said, "but you'll need more to nail them. And you'll need to move fast. Reed's leaving for Dubai tomorrow." Ellie's face lit up with that old stubborn spark. "Then we follow him," she said. I stared at her, my heart sinking. Dubai. We were a mechanic and a broke heiress from Nebraska, not international detectives. But her eyes told me she wasn't backing down. And deep down, I knew I wasn't either. This wasn't just about the money Anna Maria, it was about proving to Ellie, and maybe to myself, that we could fight back. The idea of chasing Marcus Reed to Dubai felt like something out of a movie. Not my life. I was a guy who fixed engines, not a globe-trotting vigilante. But Ellie's resolve was ironclad, and I couldn't let her go alone. Tom warned us it was a bad idea. Reed's connections ran deep, and Dubai was out of his reach. "You're walking into a trap," he said. But he gave us what he had, a flight itinerary and a hotel name, pulled from his shady contacts. We booked the cheapest tickets we could afford, draining my savings. Ellie promised to pay me back, but I waved it off. This was for her. For us. The flight was grueling. 18 hours of recycled air and restless thoughts. Ellie barely spoke, her eyes fixed on the clouds outside. I wondered what she was seeing, her mom's face, maybe, or the life she'd thought the money would buy. When we landed, Dubai's heat hit like a wall. The city a dizzying mix of glass towers and desert dust. We checked into a budget hotel. A far cry from the luxury Reed was no doubt enjoying. Tom's intel placed him at a high-end resort, meeting with associates. We had no plan, just a napkin with Reed's initials and a burning need to make things right. Ellie dressed the part again, blending into the resort's opulent lobby while I hung back, my suit already wrinkled. She'd insisted on going in alone, arguing I'd stick out too much. "You're not exactly James Bond, Dad," she'd said with a half-smile. I hated it, but she was right. I watched from a cafe across the street, my coffee untouched, as she slipped inside. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. Her text. "Found him. Private suite. Guards." My heart raced. Guards. I was about to storm in when she texted again. "Stay put. Recording." She'd rigged her phone to capture audio, a trick she'd learned from true crime podcasts. Smart, reckless girl. An hour later, she emerged, her face pale but triumphant. "Got him," she whispered, sliding into the cafe booth. She played the recording. Reed's voice, clear as day, bragging about cleaning out the Nebraska girl and funneling the money through Dubai banks. It was gold, but it came at a cost. One of Reed's guards had spotted her, and now they were looking for a woman matching her description. We didn't have time to celebrate. Back at the hotel, Tom called, his voice tense. "Holt's been tipped off. She's covering her tracks, and Kane's gone dark. You've got evidence, but you're exposed." He urged us to get out of Dubai before Reed's people found us. Ellie's hands shook as she packed, but her jaw was set. "We're not running forever," she said. "We take this to the feds." The flight back was a blur of fear and adrenaline. We landed in Omaha with Reed's recording and a plan to meet Tom's FBI contact, Agent Carter. He was a gruff guy, skeptical at first, but the recording changed his tone. "This is big," he said, scribbling notes. "But Reed's slippery. We'll need more to pin him down." He suggested we lay low while he built a case. Ellie nodded, but I saw the fire in her eyes. She wasn't done fighting. Back in Willow Creek, the gossip had shifted. People knew we were up to something, but no one knew what. Ellie stayed at the farmhouse, helping me in the shop to keep busy. We were closer now, but the rift wasn't fully healed. Late one night, she found me on the porch, Clara's old quilt around my shoulders. "I'm sorry, Dad," she said, her voice breaking. "For everything." I pulled her into a hug, the first in years, and for a moment, felt like we might be okay. Willow Creek felt smaller after Dubai, the quiet fields a stark contrast to the city's chaos. Ellie and I settled into a tense routine, waiting for Agent Carter's updates. The shop kept me busy, but every clank of a wrench reminded me of the fight we were still in. Ellie helped out, handing me tools, her hands steadier now. The townsfolk noticed some, even stopped whispering about her. But I could tell she was restless, her eyes always darting to her phone, waiting for news. Carter called 2 weeks later. The FBI had raided one of Reed's shell companies in Chicago, using our recording as leverage. They'd frozen some accounts, but Reed and Kane were still at large, and most of the $33 million was still hidden. "We're close," Carter said, "but they're fighting back. Watch your backs." His warning hung over us like a storm cloud. Ellie took it harder than I expected, her confidence cracking. "What if we lose, Dad?" she asked one night, her voice small. I didn't have an answer, but I squeezed her hand. "We don't quit, Ellie. Not now." Then things escalated. A black sedan started circling the farmhouse at odd hours, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. One morning, I found a note tucked under my shop's door. "Back off, or you'll regret it." I showed it to Ellie, expecting her to panic. Instead, she got angry. "They don't scare me," she said, crumpling the note. But I was scared for her, for us. I called Carter, who sent a local deputy to patrol the area. But it didn't ease the knot in my gut. Ellie started digging online, using skills I didn't know she had. She found a forum where scam victims shared stories, some mentioning Kane's crew. One post stood out, a woman claiming her brother had worked for Reed and knew where the money was stashed. Ellie tracked her down, a single mom in Iowa named Lisa. We drove out to meet her, the truck rattling over back roads. Lisa was nervous, her kitchen cluttered with kids' toys. "My brother's in too deep," she said, glancing at the door. "He mentioned a bank in the Caymans. That's all I know." It was another piece of the puzzle, but it came with a cost. That night, back home, someone slashed my truck's tires. The message was clear: we were being watched. Ellie wanted to keep pushing, but I made her promise to stay in the house. I wasn't losing her to this. The next day, I installed security cameras around the shop and farmhouse, my savings dwindling further. Clara would have laughed at me, spending money I didn't have to protect a daughter who'd broken my heart. But she'd have done the same. Carter called with a breakthrough. Lisa's tip had led to a Cayman account linked to Reed. The feds were moving to seize it, but they needed us to testify to tie it to Ellie's case. "It's dangerous," Carter warned. "Reed's people will come for you." Ellie didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm. I wanted to argue, to keep her safe, but I saw Clara in her stubborn, fearless, ready to fight for what was right. We met Carter in Lincoln, in a sterile FBI office that smelled of stale coffee. Ellie recounted everything: her signing the contracts, the meetings with Kane, the recording in Dubai. I watched her, proud and terrified. The feds promised protection, but I knew better than to trust promises. As we drove home, the sedan appeared again, tailing us for miles. I took a detour through the fields, losing them in the dust, but my hands shook on the wheel. This was far from over. The feds moved fast after Ellie's testimony, but so did Reed's crew. The black sedan stopped circling, but the threats didn't. A brick crashed through the farmhouse window one night, a note tied to it: "Last warning." Ellie found it first, her face pale as she handed it to me. I called Carter, who sent agents to sweep the property, but they found no fingerprints, no leads. "They're trying to scare you," he said. "Don't let them win." Easier said than done. Ellie was shaken but refused to back down. She spent hours on the phone with Lisa, piecing together more about the Cayman accounts. Lisa's brother had turned informant, feeding the feds details in exchange for leniency. It was a risky move, but it paid off. Carter called with news. They'd seized $20 million of Ellie's money, frozen in a bank linked to Reed. The rest was still out there, but it was a start. Ellie cried when she heard, not out of joy, but relief. "It's not about the money," she said. "It's about taking back what they stole from us." I knew what she meant. The money was Clara's legacy, but this fight was ours. Still, the victory felt hollow. Reed and Kane were still free, and the threats were escalating. I started sleeping with a shotgun by my bed, something I hadn't done since Clara's cancer days, when fear had kept me up at night. Ellie noticed but didn't comment. She was carrying her own weight, and I hated how heavy it looked on her. Then came the confrontation. It was a Sunday. The shop closed. The town quiet. Ellie and I were in the yard, fixing a fence Clara had loved, when two SUVs roared into the driveway. Kane stepped out, flanked by two goons. My heart stopped. He was shorter than I'd imagined, his smile oily but dangerous. "You've been busy, Jake," he said, eyeing Ellie. "You too, princess." I stepped in front of her, my hand itching for the wrench in my pocket. "Get off my property," I growled. Kane laughed, but his eyes were cold. "Give us the recording, and we walk away. Keep playing hero, and this ends badly." Ellie's hand grabbed mine, but her voice was steady. "You're not getting anything," she said. "The feds already have it." Kane's smile vanished. He nodded to his men, who started toward us. I pushed Ellie behind me, ready to fight, when a siren wailed. Carter's team had been watching, waiting for Kane to show. The goons froze, and Kane bolted for the SUV. But the feds were faster. They cuffed him in the dirt, his curses echoing across the fields. Ellie clung to me, her breath ragged. I held her tight, my own heart pounding. We'd won this round, but at what cost? Carter took Kane into custody, but Reed was still out there. The feds promised more raids, more seizures, but I could see the toll it was taking on Ellie. She wasn't sleeping, her eyes shadowed with worry. One night, she found me in the shop, cleaning tools I'd already cleaned. "I don't deserve you, Dad," she said, her voice breaking. "After what I did, you still fought for me." I put down the wrench and looked at her. Really looked. She was Clara's daughter, but she was mine too. "You're my kid, Ellie," I said. "Always will be." She hugged me, and for the first time since Clara died, I felt whole. The fight wasn't over, but we were together. That was enough for now. The weeks after Kane's arrest were quieter, but the tension lingered like a bruise. The feds kept us updated. More accounts were frozen. Another $10 million recovered. Reed was still a ghost, but Carter was optimistic. "He's running out of places to hide," he said. I wasn't so sure. Men like Reed didn't just disappear, they struck back. But for now, Willow Creek felt safe again. The farmhouse a refuge instead of a battleground. Ellie changed. She stopped checking her phone every 5 minutes. Started helping at the shop without me asking. She even fixed Mrs. Larson's old Buick, her hands steady as she worked the wrench. The town noticed, their whispers turning to nods of respect. "She's Jake's girl," they'd say, like it meant something. It did to me. One morning, Ellie found Clara's old journal in the attic, tucked in a box of keepsakes. She read it for hours, tears staining the pages. "Mom wrote about you," she told me, her voice soft. "How you always fix things, cars, hearts, everything. I swallowed hard, missing Clara more than ever. Ellie handed me the journal, opened to a page where Clara had written, "Jake's the anchor. Ellie's the sail. They'll find their way." I choked up, unable to speak. We decided to use the recovered money to start a foundation in Clara's name, helping scam victims like Ellie. It wasn't about the millions, it was about giving others a second chance, like we'd gotten. Ellie took the lead, meeting with lawyers and accountants, her confidence growing. I watched her, proud and a little awed. She wasn't the girl who'd cut me off anymore. She was stronger, wiser, and so much like her mom it hurt. One evening, we sat on the porch, the sun setting over the fields. Ellie leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "I thought the money would make me happy," she said. "But the success is what matters." I nodded, my throat tight. We'd lost so much, but we'd found each other again. That was worth more than $33 million. Carter called a month later. Reed had been caught in London, extradited to face charges. The rest of Ellie's money was gone, funneled into places even the feds couldn't reach. But Ellie didn't flinch. "We got enough," she said. And we got them. She was right. Kane was in jail. Reed was next. And we'd exposed their game. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was close. As winter settled over Willow Creek, Ellie stayed. She didn't talk about Omaha or big cities anymore. She talked about the foundation, about fixing cars, about rebuilding what we'd lost. I taught her how to rebuild an engine, and she taught me how to forgive. The farmhouse felt alive again, filled with laughter and the smell of Clara's wildflower garden, still blooming despite the frost. We weren't rich, but we were whole. And in the end, that was the real inheritance. Clara had left USA family that could break, bend, and come back stronger. As I watched Ellie laugh with a customer, her hands stained with grease, I knew we'd be okay. The road ahead was long, but we'd walk it together,